looks like everything's going. So we can get started. We're doing something a little different. Instead of working on sketches, I'm just going to work on this painting that I've been kind of plugging away on, and I'm going to try to just get some progress in on this, because I would like to finish it soon, so that it could be ready for printing for our December convention. So, just getting in on the clouds right now. Trying to refine those, sort of work from back to front when it comes to the detailing. So just want to get all these clouds to a finished state, then tighten up anything that needs to be fixed on the mountains and grass and fence and so on. Just kind of fixing the edges and things as I go. I find painting clouds to be very relaxing. It's a nice thing to zone out and fiddle with. So I'm trying to keep a close eye on this small little navigator window on the right there. Because at this stage, that's the main thing I want to look good. Then I can go in and fix all the tiny stuff later. But if my values aren't working in the small little screen, there's no point in detailing anything. So I'm trying to keep it fairly zoomed out here so I can see the whole picture. And just constantly look over to the right and see how that thumbnail version looks. Hard to know when you're done with clouds because you can just kind of push and pull things forever. It's really just about getting them to support your composition the best way you can. So I'm trying to use the lights and darks here to really make the central creature here pop out as much as I can. Sort of strategically placing all of these clouds to help set him off the page. I recently heard painting clouds compared to um, painting explosions. I heard that comparison recently. It's pretty true. There's not a whole lot of difference. I think thinking about clouds as an explosion is definitely um, I think made mine a little more dynamic. You probably wouldn't want to do that all the time, but I think for these big cumulus clouds, it is kind of fun to think of them as just a explosion. I think that helps with lighting as well, because you sort of put the light, the strongest lights, almost like they're coming out of the cloud instead of being cast onto the cloud, which I think is generally how it works, because they're denser toward the center, so you're gonna catch more light than the edges that tend to be like a little more thin and wispy. So it really is like an explosion where the light's coming from the inside. It's an interesting feel. The other thing I'm trying to keep in mind right now is just the sharpness of detail and keeping that toward the top lit area. And then as it goes down into shadows, softening that, making the light cooler, and then also just making it more of a smooth gradient instead of the sharp angled or more defined parts on the top. It kind of rolls around that edge into something that's a bit blended down here. So I have this gradient up top that I will probably eventually apply, but I'm not sure if I want to keep it. I think it does help focus things down a little bit. Toward the main figure here. So I think I will use it eventually, but for now I'm painting it with it off because it's an overlay layer on top of the clouds, and it just messes up all your color picking when you paint with something on top of your layer like that. So for now, I'll try to get looking the best I can out it, and then I'll slap that on, flatten everything out, and on top of it that way for a bit. So I'm not too sure how I want to tackle this lower part of the clouds here, like where I want it to stop and just be sky. So the lower you do it, the more kind of perspective you get. We're going off into the distance. But then it kind of disrupts the separation a little bit of the ground plane and the sky. So trying to find a good balance of where to stop the clouds. The idea of the light kind of streaming between the clouds there, but I think I need to do it on a different layer. So I'm just going to paint it out for now and then handle that with a layer where I can really control it a bit better. Something where I would need to really mess with the opacity and angle and stuff to get it right. And it's just not worth painting and repainting. Sometimes it's just better to smudge it out and then do it on a fresh layer. So something like this, I will generally spend anywhere between 40 and 80 hours. It's a little hard to judge because it's so broken up. I don't get a whole lot of like full 8-hour days to work on personal work. So it's just like an hour here and there. Ultimately, it would take less time if I was just working big chunks. It feels like you're kind of resetting every time you go away and come back. It would probably be at least 40 hours. Always trying to get faster, but that's where I'm at the moment. Trying hard not to zoom in on this. I'm gonna break that habit because it's just definitely not worth it at this stage. It slows everything down. I'd like to have more of a painterly look for this, so zooming in is just gonna remove any chance of that. Oh. Sorry for the banging noise, if you can hear that. We're having a new roof put on our house at the moment, so I'm hearing that for 3 days. Tuning it out at the moment. Oops. A little bit of time on this creature. Let's have a more accurate value structure to look at. If I'm trying to base the clouds off of what the creature is going to look like and support the creature, then I need to at least have all the values where I want them to be. All right, now I think some of this is a bit too bright. get this clear dome to be a little less pure white. So I think at the moment it's just popping out way too much. So I want to have a translucent feel, be a little pink or orange, a peach color looking flesh tone. You mostly just see that around the edge. And then by the time you get to the middle here, it's almost transparent. So around the edge, you're seeing it kind of pile in on itself as it turns the corner, so it becomes more opaque. Or when you're looking at it straight on, you would be able to see through it more clearly. At least that's the idea. Hopefully by obscuring the edge. I'm not getting rid of too much of the recognizable brain shape. It's part of the big thing for this creature that makes it not just a big jellyfish. The fact that he has tentacles and little air jets coming out of his body there help make it a little different. It's hard to find that balance of familiar and invented. People don't have some familiar things to latch onto, then it's hard to relate to. Carol Whitlatch talks about that a lot. Most of her creature designs it's a combination of two or three real world animals just by recombining things. You make a whole new creature, but it feels believable because it's working within kind of established things that we're used to seeing. to really go into this brain part under the dome and make sure that none of these shadows get too dark. So if you're looking through that translucent dome, that'll lower a lot of the contrast we're seeing. Just like if you were looking through a heavy mist. These shadows are a bit dark as well, based on how far away he is. Be good to lighten those up a bit. To just it'll increase the distance away that he feels and make him feel larger. So I think this guy's feel a little bit further in the distance just by removing some of those dark shadows. So you just have to be keeping in mind that atmospheric perspective that's coming between you and whatever you're looking at. Going to generally just lower the contrast so the lights aren't quite as bright and the darks aren't quite as dark. And the further away it goes, it increases till you get to like these mountains back here that are just a silhouette. The contrast gets removed to the point where it's just nothing but a silhouette. Finding out how to radiate that is definitely tricky. It's not quite as straightforward as normal perspective where you can follow a grid or as long as you're sticking to the rules, you can kind of know that it's right. It's a little more of a look and feel thing. Not entirely sure how I want to handle these central stock things that are almost look like a flower lay to me, which is the layers of flower petals. Looked at a bunch of jellyfish reference. I think it's kind of how it looks. I think mine looks a little too structured at the moment. Everything's too evenly spaced. Again, the reference is a bit more random. There are like some patches where there wasn't any stuff, and you just saw the kind of exposed central stem, if that makes sense. This guy's some clear cast shadows. Throw a cat out of the room first. There we go. Okay. Fine. So the shadows from these little tentacle things coming off of the dome help ground everything. If you can place some nice cast shadows on things. it does a lot to set things in space. Form shadows are good, but I think, yeah, cast shadows can really bring things up to the next level. So now that I have more of my background established, I'm able to go in to the picture here and change some of the values to better with what's going on in the clouds. Just getting things to pop off a bit more. Sometimes it's okay to fudge the lighting a bit to fix the, or to enhance the composition. So just, seeing the value of your background, saying, okay, it's getting darker. Clouds are darker down here, so I'm just gonna make the tentacle thing lighter toward the bottom to offset the darkness of the clouds. have realistic lighting, but I think there is a bit of room to fudge some things if it's in support of your composition. Ultimately, that's going to be what people care about the most. Everything is readable and kind of feels the mood that you're going for. You know, slight variations in the lighting is not going to cause anybody to look twice. When you have complete control out of over every element of your picture, there's a reason not to exercise that control and just bend everything to your ultimate goal. Not sure what I want to do with this smoke coming out here, or the air shooting out these little ports on the side. First, I was thinking of like it a kind of color, like it was like a crazy fumes or spores or something that were shooting out of them. I'm afraid for the way the rest of the painting looks, like that would just feel out of place with the color palette, since everything's just kind of pleasant and subdued. I may just want to keep it as some kind of misty jets of air, as if he's like full of helium or something, and then just uses these little puffs of air to steer. Play around with the opacity on this. I'm not sure how much I want it to stand out, or if it'd just be a real subtle thing. Oops. Wrong layer. Sunuppy is concerned about layer management, but with my current job, there's a lot of back and forth that goes on. So the more organized you can keep things, the easier it is to just go in later and change things, or if your art director decides they want a different color scheme or additional color scheme, the more you have things separated and organized, easier that is to do. Sounds like we've gone from the Tooth and Tail soundtrack to the Ruiner soundtrack. Big jump. Sounded cool. I'm interested to give that Ruiner game a try. It has a pretty awesome art style. I don't even know if it's necessarily the art that's doing it. It's just kind of a overall vibe comes together really well. Back into these clouds for a little bit. You get closer to the horizon here, the clouds are going to tend to start stacking on each other a bit more. And you're going to see less of the bottom. It'll be a bit flatter on the bottom with a little less of the shadow showing of that bottom plane of the cloud like you're seeing up here. It'll be a little more, you're looking at it head on. You'll just have more and more overlapping. Whereas you get higher up, they'll start to spread out a bit. If you can pull that off, then it'll help reinforce the perspective. The sky up here is feeling a bit empty. I don't know. I may throw in like a little wisp of a cirrus cloud or something to do something with that space. I don't want to do too much because it is nice to have resting areas in your painting where there just isn't stuff going on. but I also want it to feel balanced. Right now it's maybe a little bottom heavy. Seems like just kind of a sudden stop with the clouds there. So probably do something there. I feel like I'm just constantly making little mental notes as I go. Just can't tackle everything at once. Sometimes I will make a actual note. Just make a new layer with notes of things you want to fix. Sometimes if you write it down, you don't have the stress of having to remember that and worry about it. Keep telling yourself, don't forget to fix the clouds or change this thing. It's easier to just make a little notes layer and all the things need to be changed. It's especially helpful if you're working with art directors and stuff where they expect to see those changes, and it's not just you're just trying to make something you like, but you're getting specific direction. Sometimes it's hard to keep it all straight. So a note here and there is always helpful. Now I'm having to relay feedback to other people. So it gets even more confusing when you're trying to keep straight the stuff you're supposed to do as well as the stuff that other people are supposed to be changing in their paintings. It's getting me 9 o'clock, so it's time for me to eat some breakfast and head into the office. So, but I want to thank everybody for joining me, and we will be back next Wednesday. I'm gonna keep trying to stick to that schedule of Wednesday mornings. And I hope to see you guys next week. All right, take care.